Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to EnvironMental.
Yeah, this is our podcast where we investigate different aspects of sustainability. Each month, we give an overview, we read a book, we talk to some change makers like today, and then we have like a wrap up session. This month, we are talking about deforestation on this podcast.
And today we are joined with Catalina, and she is working with an NGO called Alisos, and we are really excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Our pleasure. So we would love to know more about what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Catalina Hildebrand, and for the last year, I've been working with Alisos. It's a small NGO that's based in Colombia, and I had the opportunity to be there for the first half of this year, of 2020. And what I do there is I help coordinate an initiative that's called Cocoa, Forest, and Peace. It brings together the public sector, the private sector, and civil society, as well as farmer associations and representatives, to work and to promote a sustainable zero deforestation cocoa. And what's interesting about the Colombian initiative is that it's got a whole peace component because of the ongoing conflict in Colombia over the last 50 years. We still have a lot of forest that is now being deforested at a very high rate. So it's a really beautiful nexus to work in and to work together with lots of allies.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about what that means at zero deforestation cocoa?
Yeah. So cocoa in Colombia we're saying it is not deforesting. I think the more correct way to put it is that it is not yet a motor of deforestation, which is a very different situation if we look at the countries that produce the most cocoa, which are African countries, where cocoa has and still is deforestation at an alarming rate. So a zero deforestation cocoa can be done in different ways. And the way we are promoting it is to have it be planted in agroforestry arrangements. If you look at it, cocoa comes from the Amazon, and it does very well in shaded areas. And so it's a perfect opportunity to, well, one, leave forest around it, if that's the case, or restore. So that's a bit that's our premise here, that cocoa is actually a solution which can give dignified income to a farmer and restore degraded land, degraded forest.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So traditional cocoa farming contributes to deforestation pretty significantly because typically they're cutting down areas of forest to plant cocoa plants. Are they trees?
Yes, they are trees.
Okay. Okay. But they like shade. So that seems really counterintuitive that they would be chopping down areas of forest to plant those.
Yeah. And I think here it's interesting to look back at history, because cocoa has had a very, very important role in indigenous cultures in the Amazon. It has been used for very many, many years, for thousands of years. And it's during colonization that we see colonizers take cocoa from Brazil, well, the Amazon, in Latin America, and bring it to Africa, where you had very, low cost or no cost production hands. And then we see that, it has been planted in a plantation style, really.
Okay.
Full sun in rows. And if you look at, in 1960, many of the West, so we're talking West Africa, right? West African countries, they had roughly 12 million hectares of forest, of which today nearly 3/4 are gone, and a lot is gone for cocoa, which makes no sense because, I mean, I guess it's, with time that we also realized that wasn't the best way to do it in terms of production, because that's what mattered. And it doesn't give a very high level, I'd want to say high quality cocoa.
Right. It's not, the plant doesn't get what it needs or wants.
Exactly, because it's operating in an ecosystem, and it's, it's getting a lot of different components from it. So it's now fully in the sun, meters apart, and doesn't give the quality it could give. But that is the cocoa that is 2/3 of cocoa is produced in only Ivory Coast and Ghana.
Really?
Oh, wow.
So most probably the last piece of chocolate you had comes from there.
Wow.
Which is still produced in really terrible human conditions. I've got a lot of child labor there. And is exported directly raw. And then, big cocoa firms, chocolate firms, would mix it up, would add, milk, sugar, what have you. And then you get what we have access to, what we buy in the supermarkets. Mm-hmm. But the basis is not a very high level cocoa, very high quality. Yeah.
I have so many questions about like the cocoa plant. Also, because if it is indigenous to Latin America, and you said you're using agroforestry and like
arrangements,
so planting within the forest, this plant. Essentially, you're utilizing its own habitat. I wanted to ask about the quality of that plant, because it's not just the sun, right? It's also the soil. But if it's in its own indigenous land anyway, the quality is probably much better. And I'm assuming that the Colombian yield is also much better with this, with the project.
So I don't want to venture out in saying that, because there are many, many factors in determining quality cocoa. And for example, in some parts of Colombia, we're having issues because the soil has some, I don't know the right vocabulary for this, has some components of cadmium, which in very high level is toxic.
Right.
So that, becomes difficult if you want to really expand and have, numbers, really be able to have a certain quantity and to maintain a standard. But I think this goes in general for a lot of things in life. If, you need such a high quantity, then the quality will be lowered, just because the standard you cannot sustain this on every level. It's not as as straightforward to say, that because it's in full sun and because it stands alone, that is the only reason it is not good quality. And I don't want to venture it, because I am not an agronomist and I cannot answer everything here. But certainly it enriches the plants. And it feeds off what's around it. So for what we are looking at now is what are agroforestry models that can also be productive, that are interesting for a farmer. So cocoa goes really well with ginger, for example. And so like, what are other, produce that also take maybe a shorter amount of time than cocoa, that can be interesting and that can make sense also economically as well as environmentally,
Right.
so that farmers would actually be incentivized to grow it, because yes, there are other produce that are just a lot more quick,
Right.
like coca in Colombia.
Okay.
So you have to find other in incentives, and
Yeah.
yeah.
That's understandable. Yeah. That farmers there would, when weighing those options, would likely choose something that was faster growing, higher yield, and regardless of laws,
Economic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an economic decision at their level.
Yeah. So something that can sustain them throughout the year, that makes sense. And that has a demand, which is not always so easy in the world of in the value chain of cocoa and chocolate. Given that, well, in Colombia, the demand is met. So we're trying to look for possibility to export it as, a very high quality and therefore higher price produce. And there would be a market in Europe, in the US.
Absolutely.
For that.
Yeah. So do you connect with, because you're working on the side of the grower, the farmer, and maybe the exporter, but what about the other side, the sales, like the end market piece of brands?
So with Alisos, we don't do that yet, or not directly. But we do have, one of the signatories of the initiative is the Rainforest Alliance, which you would have heard of. And here we do emphasize that we don't want to necessarily only promote certification, but I think having them involved allows to have that, that the line of the whole chain, let's say. To have it in overview. And about certification, of course, comes up very quickly in this conversation. And there are a lot of them, you would know. And I think it's a process. I think it's a process, and it keeps changing, and it keeps, it should also keep hiring the standards in every way. And so, you see more of them pop up. Some stay around, and I think the strong ones that have been around for a while, they're also constantly changing, reevaluating, and that's really good. That's really good to see, and that's I think a hell of a job to keep being relevant.
Yeah, with your certification, for sure. What certifications, I guess, when it comes to, chocolate is a huge part. You live in the Netherlands and there's chocolate everywhere, like here. I think that's for everywhere, but I certainly feel like chocolate is more in my life now than it was when I lived in the States. So I guess my question is, like, how, as a consumer, do you know what chocolate you're consuming, or do you choose the right chocolate product?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. And I don't have a very good answer.
It's okay. That's something that look for certifications.
So I'm not a huge chocolate fan.
That's hilarious. That makes sense, though, if you see the inner workings of it. It doesn't have such a sweet taste anymore.
No, it's quite a bitter reality. It's true.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I think, but I've never been like such a massive chocolate fan. So I do look at it and notice the different certification and notice I didn't before. I did notice it on coffee, I think, a lot more because that's something I would regularly get when I'm in at the grocery store. But chocolate, I never really paid attention. It's also an interesting product because it's not, an essential, or I mean, coffee isn't either, but it has become more of a must, let's say, in many.
Some would argue.
But yeah, if you look at chocolate, at least in the Netherlands, where I see it, I mean, there are a lot of certifications. So it's almost like, whoa, which one means what? It's almost, or which one has, three of them slapped on their packaging, which,
Right.
would mean, okay, that one passed 3 tests instead of 1. But yeah, and then you still have the very normal one. But when I get, when I buy chocolate or get chocolate, it's impossible to say where it comes from.
Yeah.
The only place you see, the only country that's printed on it is, where it was processed. So you get Belgium, Switzerland, the Netherlands. You don't get where it comes from.
Right.
And it's, I mean, on the one hand side, I think we have to continue being critical and continue pushing and asking for more transparency and continuously challenge the system that's in place. And on the other, it is a difficult task. It is a very difficult task because the way certification happens, as far as I understand, is that you have for cocoa, you'd have cocoa collected in farm A, B, C, D, and farm A, B, and C have been visited and have been vetted to have this logo, right? Is certified cocoa. But you still get the beans from farm D, and it's all put together in the same storing place. And so in the end, when you certify cocoa, there are many ways to do it. But what you're certifying is that a certain amount of those beans, and that the amount would vary, comes from these certified farms.
Mm-hmm.
Because, then it would mean go and visit every single farm. And even then with the visit, the visit is coming, so you don't know the reality of it. And it's very, very, tricky, very, very difficult to really have full transparency.
Right. And so far as deforestation, because you mentioned that there are essentially 5 main places where cocoa is grown right now, and that the biggest issue as it comes to like deforestation is in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. But what about in Latin American countries? Is that still a big part of cocoa production there also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So most cocoa is produced in Western Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Latin America has very, very, very low numbers.
Okay.
Colombia is on 0.1.
Okay.
It's talking about very little.
Okay.
It is an interesting potential for the economy of that country. And no, of course, it's not black and white. It is deforestation. It is causing deforestation in Latin America for sure, for sure. And again, the example of Colombia is interesting because of the conflict that has been happening there for the last 50 years. The FARC were in the Amazon, and so there wasn't much going on, and no one really going into the Amazon to venture out in their territory, which means that now we see, after 50 years, the difference between Colombia and its neighboring Amazon sharing countries, where there has been a whole lot more deforestation because of cocoa, but because of a lot of other value chains. And so it puts us in an interesting position that, bringing this initiative now can, raise awareness and really make serious plans for the potential that this country has to learn from the mistake of the neighbors. This is a really nice quote from Wade Davis, who spent a lot of time in Colombia and in the Colombian Amazon. Like he says, what is Colombia going to do with this 50 years that it has been given to make better choices?
Yeah.
And we're part of, with this initiative, we embody the zero deforestation cocoa value chain efforts. And a body called the Tropical Forest Alliance, they have these efforts in different value chains. They have it for cattle, for soy, for milk, for cocoa. Yeah, I think those. And yeah, we don't want to wash our hands and just say that cocoa is fine. It is doing much better than all of those. But yeah, let's also remember that the main reason, or that the main cause of deforestation is this of forest clearing, is the use of the land, right? And that's agriculture expansion, that's livestock ranching, that's infrastructure. It's all, I think it's interesting to reflect on the fact that it's all extraction for a certain market. Extraction because there is a demand.
Right. And I really like the communication you're creating around it. Is like there's the peace component here, and that it is a not yet deforestation player in Colombia. That makes me feel like this is something that you're growing there as an opportunity in this country to like create a market in a place where this plant is indigenous and can grow really beautifully and maybe help with the conflict that's been going on there for so long. Kind of the goal with the NGO's plan, Alisos. Am I saying that right? Is that how I say it?
Alisos, yeah.
Alisos, okay.
Sure, yes, that's the goal. I mean, it's a great opportunity. And as I said, so this is the initiative for Colombia, but there are other initiatives that are similar, that are called Cocoa and Forest. So we've got the peace component because of the special situation. But there is a similar, there are three actually, initiatives that are the same. One is in Ivory Coast, one is in Ghana. They've been going on for 3 years each. 3 years each. There's a new one in Cameroon that was just signed a couple of weeks ago. Nice. And Peru is also working on one. And so that's what we're trying to reinforce as well via this knowledge exchange of Cocoa and Forest program. It's a virtual program where we bring together representatives of these sectors, so private, public, NGO, and farmers representatives from Ivory Coast and Ghana with Colombia, Peru, Brazil, and Dominican Republic, to incentivize having these initiatives that are really coming from the ground up, from the people involved in that value chain locally, ensure the private sector is in, ensure the public sector is in, because you're not going anywhere if you don't have them sitting at the table, and have that exchange. So I think there's a lot the Latin Americans can learn from the Africans and vice versa. And it's been really nice. We've had 2 sessions so far, and we're going to have 10 throughout till October. And we've been doing, we have a technical component, which another firm is going to be taking leading. So the whole, agroforestry and working with smallholder farmers. But we are handling the part on multi-actor alliance building. How do you sit at the table with all these different interests and these different goals, and maybe in some cases relationships that are already, difficult as a base. It's been
I'm
really
curious about
nice.
that because this has been going on since, you mentioned earlier, since the 60s at least, especially, and it's been going on for a long time in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. So yeah, some of these relationships are at least strained. How does it feel? I think for you, but also what is it like for them to have somebody come in and be like, well, you've been deforesting and we're going to help you stop doing that. And do they see it as a problem? Do they want to stop doing it? What's that like? Your face is like, oh.
No, certainly it's really tricky, and I can't say how they feel. But I'm very happy that I'm participating in this from a Colombian NGO perspective. And I feel that because we are coordinating the program and we are specifically handling the part on multi-actor and conflict resolution, I feel we are on the same level. It is not as patronizing as if it were to be done by, an actor that wouldn't be living a similar situation, that wouldn't know of an initiative like this, that would just come in and deliver this and be out. Like, we are really involved. We are living the same. The initiative has been doing well in Colombia because we, as an NGO, we pay a lot of attention to. We do a lot of that sort of work, process work, conflict resolution work, and that's often overlooked. That's like the soft skills. That's never the priority. The priority is the technical, is like the hard skills, is knowing how you do it, is knowing how would you exactly, arrange the agroforestry setup. But then, you might actually run into a problem later on if you haven't really built a relationship of trust. There's a nice concept that's called the walnut theory, I believe. And so it's on the shape of a walnut, and all the way on top is process, and all the way in the bottom is results. And it says like you need a bit of both. Otherwise, you will get nowhere. If you only have process, you won't get to the result. If you only have the result, you get into a conflict, which means you have to start from zero again, de-escalate, and build trust again. Yeah, and I think it's a really nice approach, and maybe it's something that could be done for more value chain actors, because I think the only way to solve many of today's problems is going to be in very strong partnership involving multiple actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
but the people involved need to feel heard and need to feel like the organization actually understands their situation and where they're coming from, because otherwise it just seems perhaps performative or not as authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can like go in and be like hold the presses, stop. This has to end. That's not effective.
Yeah. Although, I mean, it would be also nice to be able to take a step back, I think, with everyone. This is just me, my personal opinion. But yeah, I think everyone involved has, their own interest because of how everything is set up as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that raw cocoa gets into Europe with zero tariff, but if it's processed somewhere else, then you have to pay 9%, tariff on what comes in, well, 9, 12. Yeah, it's not a just system to start with, and everybody's playing their role. Because okay, well, everybody also has a family to feed, and we can't all always be dismantling or re-questioning. We also need to move it along. But yeah, I think that's also a very big issue, that we look at nature as a resource that we can just continuously take from.
So I have two questions, and they're on opposite sides of the spectrum. One of them is kind of yes or no. Is that because you said that in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, like they were taken there and they're grown on a plantation, like as agriculture. So are you focused on also reforesting there?
That would be the idea with agroforestry. Yeah. And that has a great potential.
Yeah. Plants are stronger when they're grown in the forest and grown together in a regenerative way. So, okay, that's awesome. Then the other thing is about the policy and the just system and the taxes. And I actually didn't know that about raw cocoa being different than processed cocoa. I know that about rice.
Did I? Yeah.
But I think, that's a huge industry. I worked in the rice industry for a while, and it's the same. Or similar, not exactly the same, but so I guess it's like, at what level, and this can be the NGO is really small, but this can be a personal opinion. At what level do you think it's important for the policies of countries to change in order to work with these deforestation and reforestation, like NGOs and focuses?
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is a big question.
I think at all levels, just like we need policy, we also need pressure from consumers, and we need stronger voices, a stronger civil society in every producing, and this goes for cocoa, but anything else as well. Because I think not one strategy would work by itself, and even even all of them. I mean, we're still in the same. I feel a bit frustrated sometimes, and like we are still having these conversations. The COP is happening for 26 years. I mean, over. Yeah, and we still have all sorts of still have all the political leaders flying there to sign, not even sign, to shake hands, to show that how well they're doing. But it doesn't happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen. And I think there are many reasons it doesn't happen. But I think the system that we have in place now is not necessarily helping that change. It's completely contradictory to the change. And we see, the suffering it causes, in human lives. The living world. I don't know if you read any of George Monbiot's pieces. Yeah, he's a really cool journalist, and he has a whole proposal on using different words, because that matters, because that triggers a different way. That's how we see the world. And so he said we shouldn't say environment, we should say the living world. We shouldn't say climate change, we should say climate breakdown. We shouldn't use natural capital. we shouldn't look at animals as stock, you
Right.
know. And yeah, we still are in that mentality very, very much.
Yeah.
So it has, yes, for sure, there has to be policy, there has to be regulation, but there has to be a buy-in from the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to aim for something more than what they call the living income. You know, that's not a life. That's not dignified life. Yeah, and I think we could do more, but yeah, we're still, yeah, we've got these lenses on for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really, really true.
Yeah, and I mean, the system has been built in a way to sort of hide all of these ugly truths behind how things are sourced, and so and it, by design it works from shielding people from knowing, you know, that their cocoa came from perhaps farms that utilize child labor. Like, that's not something that anyone would know, even if you were trying to buy a better chocolate bar at a grocery store. You would never know that side of it, and that's by design, you know, that they don't the chocolate producers would never want you to know that.
Right.
But in order to make that change, in order to for consumers to put pressure on businesses, they need to know that that's even happening. They're doing a very good job at keeping that very under wraps, which is pretty tragic.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. We kind
wild.
of talked about this last week, where we noticed that almost every conversation we have with each other or with changemakers almost always circles back to a change in the way we think and how necessary that is. And that's like, as it comes to sustainability, that's important. And also, when it comes to the topic around deforestation, we're finding it really easy to get disheartened because, and I think you said it so beautifully, it's frustrating to see how, like both of you, how things are, like we're blinded and we don't have access to understanding the value chains, and we don't know that we need to demand this stuff. And I wish we had, I guess I'm just wishing that we had more solutions. Yeah. Or I'll just
it would be virtually impossible to, you know, do research on every item that you go and buy. Like, you would just need a whole other life in parallel to make sure that everything is really sourced responsibly. But I think one solution that I have a lot of faith in are these different movements that push people to be more intentional. And you see this in all these slow, right? Like the slow food, the slow fashion, the slow travel. Because you're actually going against a system that says quick, quick, and more. And it goes with so many things. We were discussing with a friend that there might also be like slow entertainment. Because you get everything so quick all the time. And, you know, you buy a pair of jeans for 15 euros. That did not cost 15 euros. You go to Barcelona for 20 euros. That does not cost 20 euros. These prices are all externalized. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty cool, that's a nice solution, to just also have a solution in this conversation. yeah, and now we're talking about produce, about food, and the link with deforestation.
Mhm.
But yeah, I know a little bit of what what I follow in on slow food, slow fashion, slow travel. I think yeah, that's a really beautiful way to think about, and really yeah, very revolutionary
Mm-hmm.
uh, way to participate in society.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Really.
mean, that's really been the main, I think, conclusion we've come to is that, ultimately it comes down to the choices that we make as individuals, and just we just sort of have to realize that the yeah, buy more, more, more consumerism, that
Mhm.
just it doesn't work, and it need yeah, they're like
We need to shift our
Mhm.
thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has to
Yeah,
happen. Yeah.
yeah, but I would say like let's continue to be critical and not only pinpoint it on individuals, because that's also a narrative that has worked
That's true.
very well. And
Right.
if I change my light bulbs and if all my friends all over the world change their light bulbs, it's not going to have an immense impact.
That's true.
Um, I think
Right.
Greenpeace said that 10 companies are responsible for 70% of plastic production
Yep.
worldwide.
I
10.
saw that. Yeah.
And I was looking at deforestation, and I think you can also find 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I know it's a step further, and I consider myself an environmental activist. But then, yeah, the next step is to hold these entities accountable for what they do.
Yep.
Because, of course, there is consuming, but it's not such a simple equation
Hmm.
as to
Right.
say if there is demand, there will continue to be, a market for it. Because there's
Right.
a demand for a 15-euro flight to Barcelona, but that's because there's massive subsidy and lobby behind it,
Hmm.
Right.
you know? And if the jeans does your jeans don't cost 10 euros, then you just will buy less jeans.
Yeah.
And it is not harming anyone to consume less. And it might actually save lives, and
Right.
cause less harm.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps this is too big of a question, but like, how can we start to hold these massive companies accountable?
Hmm.
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. Is it policy? Is it
Yeah, yeah, it's very difficult. Um, there's such a massive lobby as well.
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I'm involved, or I was involved um, in a campaign called Fossil Free that's aiming to um, divest money from the fossil fuel companies. And here in the Netherlands, we looked at Shell, and we started looking at its involvement in society, and it's everywhere. It's so
Mm-hmm.
you think, okay, yes, politics. It's politics. It's museum. It's school. It's everywhere.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, for sure, it's very, very tricky.
Yeah.
But
To
I think there needs,
untangle.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, I think exposing it first, and then putting pressure in different ways.
Right.
Well, this fossil free one, went for the um, for the pocket, which is always a very good strategy, because that's one where you get companies to react very quick. Um, but yeah, there is reputational risk, and
Yep.
it's yeah. I'm always afraid to mention this in a job context, but it's not that radical. It's actually more radical to wake up every day and, you know, be behind an effort that deforested 1 hectare. That's what's radical.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you raising your voice against it is unacceptable. I think, yeah, the word activist has bad rep, and we should take it back. And yeah, I think we should all be politically involved.
Right.
But yeah, I think there are many. Huh?
Sometimes I just find myself wondering, like, how did we even get here? You know, how did these 10 companies just take over this, and we weren't even looking, or there were people looking, and like you're saying, they were just swept under the rug. They are seemed as like crazy, or you know, not hireable, or you know, those voices that are just saying no, this isn't a sustainable option, are removed.
Yeah, and Colombia has had, I think, the worst year of defenders of environment, right? They call themselves, that have been killed. I mean, it's almost 1 person a day that is killed because they raise a voice. It's really impressive indeed that we are still at this level.
Yeah.
But I'm reading this very interesting book called The Divide from Jason Hickel. And I'm not too far yet, but he talks about international development, which is what I studied, and essentially just demystifies all of the efforts we've been, you know, doing over the last 50 years, and the links to colonization, the links, you know, to the start of capitalism, and how that would not have been possible without the accumulation and the genocides that took place. Because if you, at some point, you know, the numbers are so high, it's difficult to grasp that this even could have taken place. But yeah, it has such deep roots and then I think in things that we still do and think and say, even, right? Because we are like a product of all of this.
Yeah. Takes a lot of unlearning,
right,
to be able to know the best way to like actually move forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe one last thing, I don't know much about it yet, but I want to get more involved in that, is the whole school of thought that pushes, you know, degrowth as a solution. And again, like the slow movements that we see, it also really opposes this kind of crazy race that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I've been seeing that mentioned, this like ungrowth or like degrowth, a lot on Twitter actually, and I'm not really familiar with it yet, but it is really interesting.
Yeah, they're having, I think, their 8th annual conference in the Netherlands over the summer.
Oh,
something to watch out for.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna. There's a conference on degrowth
in August.
Maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah.
If we can.
If we can.
By that point, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. How can people keep up with what you're doing, or what Alisos is doing?
Alisos will become more active on LinkedIn because we've got someone helping us with communication. And I am not a very avid user of Instagram, but getting there. I think my name is Catalina Von VONH.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Happy to keep in touch through there.
Well, wonderful. If you all like this content and you want more of it, be sure to subscribe. We talk to a changemaker at least once a month. And we also read books and do book reviews and talk about sustainability. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a bummer. But this is about being real and sharing the truth about what happens in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how else can we uncover potential solutions then without diving into the problems? And you have to. Yeah, yeah. Catalina, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain a bit and for chatting with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was really nice. It was really nice to meet you guys and have good conversations.
Yep, they're necessary. Yeah, gotta have these. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.